stories about charity measures, merger of two disability charities, but I think there's a wider tale here. Effort to score the long-term future is too prominent, driven-based disability charities. Disability Focus and Disability Together have merged. They've said, well, obviously, as you can imagine, probably it's designed to bolster financial resilience. As the demand for crucial services like financial apprenticeship remains exceptionally high, but at basis the funding, the organisations are able to charge or raise independently. And, why am I highlighting this for two specific charities? It's just more the wider story, really. I mean, one of them, I think Disability Together, they're not both DPOs, and by DPOs I mean disabled people's organisations, and they're basically specific organisations that are run by and for disabled people, as opposed to non-profits that are often run by, they could be run by disabled people, but they very often have non-disabled people at the executive end as well, usually started by non-disabled people, to be fair. So they're not running control by disabled people specifically. Not that they don't have a place, it's just that, not DPOs, strictly sense of the word. One of these organisations is a DPO, one of them isn't. It's just a non-profit. But why is it important? I feel it is because DPOs in particular, you found after the kind of 2008 crash, they really struggled to survive, because obviously a lot of organisations, I know people say a lot of organisations struggle, yes they did, but ultimately the great kind of empowerment boom of the 90s leading into the 2000s, where DPOs were encouraged, and there's a lot of funding for DPOs. There was a mass use amounts. I'm not saying there was like millions there, but there was active funding available for disabled people's organisations to grow and prosper, to thrive, and there was hard fought kind of alliances with local government where they worked in collaboration. Not always. There was a lot of pressures. For some, there was some had antagonistic relationships with local authorities, not for the sake of it, but because they felt perhaps they didn't go far enough in terms of certain issues of people's rights. I know for a fact that, I've worked for DPOs in the past, and, I know some kind of relationships got quite feisty at times, for certain ones, not for all. But as I said, post 2008, it's obviously the economic crash and all third sector organisations struggling. I think DPOs have really struggled to kind of rebuild from that point onwards, and I think now more than ever, with a lot of the challenges that disabled people are facing commonly, whether that be financially, whether that be in terms of rights. We've talked about how many times a lot of these posts about accessibility and about it going backwards, not forwards. Welfare rights, the right to work, all of that seems to be going backwards. You still got the spectre of assisted dying. I think the MP that brought that to the House of Commons there's talks about bringing that back to Parliament, so that hasn't gone away. That will be revisited as well, which is a great concern to many disabled people, not all, but to many, and they have their valid reasons for that. And as I've said personally myself, my own opinion is that it just feels a bit dystopian for disabled people at the moment. Hopefully, as much as I've talked about certain aspects that are positive, and assistive technology, AI, and that kind of thing, and how it's possibly like the top in terms of us kind of using that innovative for all sorts of things. In terms of general day to day, it is looking very bleak for disabled people. also the fact that, DPOs having to merge. And also in this case, there's one DPO and there's one that's not DPO, and that creates its own potential struggles as well, because how much will the DPO's influence be diluted by the fact that it's now an organisation that isn't necessarily strictly DPO, and most that organisation is there for the benefit of disabled people. It's a very different psychology between a DPO and a not-for-profit, because DPOs obviously disabled people who are at the heart of living the life of a disabled person and understand a lot of those issues. Not to say that non-disabled people don't understand those issues, and those that have around disabled people. There's a difference being to get life from a disabled person. If it's certain challenges, then even being around disabled people, I think the psychology is different, and the way they approach rights could potentially be different. So it'll be interesting to see what the future is for that organisation once it merges. But it will be for DPOs probably to survive having to now merge with other organisations that don't necessarily have the same ideological mindset. Because, social model, etc. has to be any, local governments, can talk about the social model and their approach and personality, etc. and so forth. But when it actually comes to actual inception of services and whatever, there's still disabled people that feel that their needs aren't being met and they're not acknowledged in the way they should be. So it's not, sometimes it's not even for for want of those organisations trying, they're doing their best, but there's, again, it's like there's catering for people and there's living the life of the people that you're catering for, and they're two different things. They're just the way it is. And I'm not saying that organisation that merged with those two organisations that merged won't thrive. Hopefully they will, but it does worry that the only fee for DPOs to survive is potentially to merge and then potentially have their, where do they go from there? Are they DPOs anymore? Are they, is their political stance diluted? How progressive will they be? How progressive is the future of disabled people's movement? Do we see the end of DPOs? Because ultimately, who heads up those organisations? Will it be a power struggle between non-disabled people, disabled people, and I think, I don't know, governments providing grassroots funding. I think that they'll argue that there's plenty more other issues that they need to tackle first. So where does that progressive money in terms of for the grassroots disabled movement come from? Does it come from business potentially? Are there enough disabled entrepreneurs to pull that funding in? Would they do that? Is it in their interest to do that? Hopefully the answer comes from somewhere. Or is it just building slower? Is it changing what DPO looks like, and maybe those groups are looser than they were before in terms of concrete infrastructure organisations, and just rebuild it again from the ground upwards? Even just like friend collectives working towards common aim. Because let's be honest, like the groups such as, protest groups such as the what used to be Dan. I think Dan is still around. Direct Action Network, or even DPAC and groups such as that. They still get together. They still have protests and so forth. And they're able to navigate. Yes, they're probably not as funded as they'd like to be, but they can do protests. They're active on social media, that kind of thing. So they do have a presence. It's possible. You don't need a shoddy building and kind of, a social interest company and whatever else and millions in the bank but it does obviously help to fund other things ultimately. But so I do think, sorry,